Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to learn by asking you questions.
Okay,
Please allow me to ask you some questions.
sure. Go ahead.
Um, if I have to ask you about your journey into yoga, and since you've done Iyengar yoga, uh, how do you resonate? Like, when you were a student, what was it that, it connected you with yoga? And then when you were growing, like considering you've studied so much, your educational background is so awesome, and you're working so well, like a very well professional life, and managing a yoga practice. So at each stage and now, how has it changed for you, and what has kept you going with it, like kept
Okay.
you on with it?
Oh, okay. Actually, I was very fortunate that I started learning when I was very young, in school, in fact. So it was just one routine which was added to life. And it was a weekend class every Sunday with Guruji for many years, and later Saturday and Sunday. So every Sunday morning was fixed for that. So it just became part of life. So even today, we still have the Sunday morning class which we attend. So there was nothing much to be done. There was nothing like personal practice because when Guruji taught on a Sunday for 2 hours, the effect lasted for 3 to 4 days. So there was no need or any desire to do anything more. But something kept us going, and this routine went on for many years. Later, when one went to college, Sundays were always free. So it continued. So, in any way, I don't think you took an effort to make it part of life. Then, as studies continued, I was working, and there were times where, I worked in the field of human IVF. So, we had to often work on the weekends. And there were times where weekday there may not be work, but weekends there was always work. So, it's Murphy's laws. So, then what would happen is that it would take you 5, 6 hours, 8 hours of work. So I was very fortunate, or maybe people with whom I was working saw the interest, so they were always cooperative. So what would happen is that supposing there was a case scheduled, and I was working with Dr. Indira Hinduja, and at that time she was very fond of Mahabharata. So that would be screened on television around 10 o'clock. So imagine coming after that to do work. So I would have possibly been in the lab till 8 or 7 or 8 o'clock. So we worked out a deal between ourselves. I said, I'll come in the morning at 5:36 and, finish off and then go to class and come back and, incubation time and come back. So she was cooperative. So I have always found that right through. So basically, it has not been, I would say, very difficult or something. It's just you take it as part of life and you adapt to life as and when, you know, things modify or change or demand. So, and as you progress, sort of it grows onto you. So I moved to Bangalore for a couple of days, and that's where possibly became much more serious about my practice because I realized because there were no weekend classes to attend, there was no regular practice, so it was very easy to lose everything. So then started personal practice, and then you realized how much you were missing, and that's how practice came in. And then when one started teaching, practice became much more important because unless you practiced, you could not communicate effectively what you wanted to teach. Because if you're teaching by instructions, then it would be very superficial, it will not last long. But when it's experiential, it changes. So that's how you shift from being a student to a teacher to a student. It's cyclic. So that's how practice continues.
So basically, you always kept on to it. You just knew, okay, I have to do this.
No, it's something. I would be quoting a friend of mine who is from Israel, and she had 5 relapses of cancer. I've written about her in my book. And somebody said, you didn't mention you do yoga. So she says, what's there to mention? Do you tell everybody you brush your teeth every day? So it's her analogy. It's become so routine that it's not something you have to do or you don't. It just becomes, and some days you don't. So you don't. That's it. So there was no compulsion in any way to do things or any other way of, oh, what if I miss? Or any kind of a force. It's so normal. So you don't think much about it.
So it's just a part of you. You have to,
It's a
it's like,
part of life. So yeah, there may be phases you can't. So you can't. That's it.
so basically at every point you accept it. Like it's a
Yeah, I
part of
guess so.
you.
It's part of life. No, how will you? I mean, you accept things in life. That's the first thing you learn in yoga is the art of acceptance. So, there are things which don't go your way. There are things which go beyond what you anticipate. So, whatever it is, I think that's the biggest lesson yoga teaches is to adapt and to accept. And possibly it comes, I believe, through yoga, or possibly it is nature, or possibly it is upbringing, or possibly it's with everybody. I don't know.
So, like you mentioned, like there are women who, when they are young, maybe they start yoga or even they're studying yoga, but somehow they end up living at different stages
You
because they got married or have children or work or family life.
Okay, I think what happens in many cases is when you start anything with a purpose or a goal, then when the purpose is served or the goal is reached, there is a decision to be taken. Okay, so if I start yoga because I had, or somebody starts because they have a back problem, and once it's solved, they feel what's the need to do it. I start yoga as to get a certificate in yoga. Once I get it, that's the end of it. So I would say in our tradition, basically, we are not really very encouraging of goal oriented as such in general. So most of the time, the people may come with a goal, but very soon they forget what they came for and they continue. And in fact, we've done a study once to determine what got people to yoga, what gets them to continue after 10, 15, 20 years. And more than 50% came with a health issue, and all those who came with the health issue and said, why, what makes you continue? And these were a proper structured questionnaires. So it's not something they would say what people would like to hear. So there were a series of questionnaires, those instruments designed by psychologists. And at the end, they said there's something in it, something spiritual about it that keeps us going. So you start with something and you continue it for some other reason. And I think women, I mean, I cannot say I don't have the experience of marriage or motherhood, etc. But I know of people who do. And one thing is possibly it is yoga which helps and sustain much more than anything else. Because, that's the stage where there is so much of adaptation that has to be taken. That's a stage where there are physiological changes, endocrine changes, psychological changes, societal norms, and possibly if one is very rigid at that time, I think you have more problems. Like if somebody is say a well structured life and believes in a very structured organized life, yeah, there has to be discipline, but discipline is not rigidity. So if they have a well disciplined life, I get up at 6 o'clock, I do this for 1 hour, I do this for 1 hour, and it goes on. Now they have kids, obviously this structure breaks. Or sometimes, most times, most women accept it and life continues. And that's why people generally say that women are more adapting, etc., because they have to if they want to survive. And it's possibly an intrinsic nature. But if somebody is very rigid about it, that's where problems occur. So, like practice, for example, there are obviously outliers. So I remember a student in the US, my sister was talking about, who delivered and was very particular about her practice. You can't miss practice. 3 days later, she comes to class with a 3 or 5 day toddler. Not even a toddler. I mean, I just a newborn. And you want to say, no, I don't want to miss my practice. And saying, hello, you can't. Think about the baby. So, that's where when you have very objective mindedness, then issues occur. But basically, life is subjective. The whole essence of life is, to feel, to experience. You can't quantitate everything. And that, you respond to what you feel, what you experience. And then you feel again. So that's what we learn in our practice of asanas. You do something objectively, then you have an experience, then you say, oh, this gave me an experience, what did I do? And then it sort of is a constant action reflection, a process of action and reflection which goes on, and that gets you what gets you into the yogic state of absorption, etc. So I think it's all about the practice, which I think does make you much more tolerant, which in our culture is a good thing. Some cultures, tolerant is not considered good. But in general, I think more adaptable. When you're more adaptable, you're less stressed. you learn to accept, and you learn to face the challenges. So it doesn't mean because you accept that you are subdued or pulled down or something like that. You have a much broader vision. So, okay, this path is not available. What other path do I have? So I think it changes one's personality, vision, outlook in life. And also, that's possibly the reasons you find, like, just yesterday, I happened to re-see Guruji's biopic. And that's where you see the life in the individual, that that you be in their presence for a few moments and you get recharged. So I think that is the essence that comes. And I believe it must be the practice of yoga, or yogic people around.
So this is so beautiful, right? You are doing some asanas, which are basically bodily movements. When you stay there, are in that position for some time. But all these different positions and asanas that we do actually impact our way of being in a normal life. I mean,
Yeah.
when you go to a gym, that doesn't happen. But why does it happen in yoga that you're doing some asanas and it actually affects your
Okay.
way of being?
See, everything is done via the body because we are who we are. Our identity is because of our body and more so because of our face, right? So we identify people. Now, a body is there. Your identity is because of your mind, your emotions, your intelligence, and yourself within. The moment the self goes, the body becomes the body. The I goes away. Now, very often, in generally, what happens is that all these aspects of our being are broken up. So people say, oh, body and mind. I know body says something, mind says something else. Or, the conflict between the intelligence and the emotions, those kind, the distance between the head and the heart, those kind of things. Now, in the practice of yoga, the purpose of the practice of yoga is to bring everything together. So the differences sort of melt away. So I think that what appears as a physical movement is not just physical, because the body cannot function without the mind. Okay, so sometimes I have personally no experience with gym, but yes, I have seen people in a gym walking. And yes, there is a physical exercise, no doubt about it. But their mind is somewhere else, listening to music, fair enough, or doing something. So there is, the body and mind are getting more and more apart. So what I feel that in the practice of yoga, everything is brought together. Now, if we let us look at it a little more objectively, the body moves. Say, if I move my limb, it is because of the brain. So if one has a stroke, body functions get affected, right? So body is under the neural control. Now, the neural control is under also the emotional control. So what we have in science is we talk of neuropsychology, neuroendocrinology, neuroimmunology. So the brain is the main thing. Now, with my bodily movements, I can possibly access different areas of the brain. But normally, this is also done. Any activity you do, there is a neural activity. You run, you watch, listen to music. Yes, I'm sure different neural centers get activated. But what possibly happens during this practices that we are consciously doing it. And when we develop that sensitivity, that is where the difference occurs. So, when we start, it's purely physical. I mean, if we start talking, feel, the consciousness moving up, it's very absurd for a beginner. Feel the awareness shifting. You can't. Feel the energy moving to the tips of the fingers. You can't. You can feel the arm moving up. So it starts physically, and that is why it takes so many decades of practice. Or possibly that's why Patanjali says, no, Satu Dirgha Kala Nairatarya Satkara Sevito Dradbhumi. It's long hours of practice. It is intense practice, not physical workouts, but to build or understand the channels that are existing in the body. So when that happens, I think it brings about transformations. So that's how yoga, the Guruji said, no, yoga doesn't change, it transforms people. So it happens over a period of time. So if you ask any practitioner, or anybody in life where, there are certain things which have changed their direction of life. But most of the time, it's not intentional. They'll think back, oh, this is where I got into. Very often. For example, uh, you may have got into yoga class, maybe whatever. You will always remember your first teacher because since then it has become a part of your life.
Yeah.
But you may have attended many classes, you may have attended many, but something which has influenced you, you still remember after decades. So I think that's where the journey starts. Something that has impacted you, but you realize it much later, not at that time. And that's where I think it differs in a big way from exercises. Yes, it is an exercise, but it is far beyond. So I can talk, but the experience that you get holds you.
Mm. Mm.
You can get absorbed. It's very easy for the mind to wander listening to somebody. But if that listening is listening to your own self simultaneously, mind gets absorbed. So that's where there is a strong body, mind, emotions, intellect connection. And when you have a support system of so many together, naturally, you appreciate and enjoy it, especially if they are in synchronization. So, like you say, if they're all working together, it's a symphony. But all working in different directions, same instruments can create a cacophony. So it's how you get.
Yeah, so beautiful because I had such a time in life and I didn't realize I overcame it just because I was doing my practice. And I realized later that, oh, it was like you just mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah. Because see, if one is born, there are going to be problems. Let's face it, you can't have a situation or life without problems. You are going to experience loss. You are going to experience, it's part of life. I mean, there'll be a minuscule amount of people who will not. So, how, and fortunately, along with that, we have the ability to withstand. But here, I think the practice sort of doesn't make you see what others see stress as stress. It helps you
Mhm.
run a little more smoothly for, for everybody. So yeah, there may be health issues, there may be social issues, there may be personal issues, emotional, but I think the way one can handle it is much easier. So,
Yeah.
it's because not everybody is starting yoga for that matter. A very small percentage of people will be doing yoga for, those who say they're doing it for, for Kaivalya are saying it because you can't have a desire if you are aiming for Kaivalya. But in general, people start with small, purposes.
Mm.
And gradually it gets bigger and bigger, and gradually it just sort of engulfs you. So, whatever one does for and whatever one gets, it makes our quality of life better.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. I have been blessed to hear many teachers of Iyengar yoga. Though I have not met Guruji, but I always feel that I have felt his presence. So, like as teachers, whenever you all, speak about him, it always feels he's around. So, what is it about him that has impacted all of you all? Or what is it about him that whenever you all speak, it's always his presence is felt? How do you rever him? Like, how do you do this?
Honestly, I don't know. Like to be very honest, you meet a lot of big people in life over a period, achievers in their own fields, in their own. But also as you get to know people more, there are limitations and you accept it because we're human. But with Guruji, the more we got to know him, you saw that there was so much transparency about him. Absolutely. There was no mask over him. And I think that there was a direct connection because of that. There was no show. There was no, uh, that openness, the simplicity, which hits you hard. That somebody has achieved so much, but that humility, that simplicity, that compassion, you could see that ability to do so much, but not realize that it's all done. I think these are the factors which touched all of us, and possibly touched us more after he left. So I once remember talking to Guruji, asking him, like there is this discussion about whether it is the same Patanjali who wrote the Yoga Sutras and grammar. And I said, why this discussion, Guruji? So he said, oh, he just laughed and he says, no, some people believed, that how can one individual do everything? What's the connection between grammar and yoga? And we know there's a massive connection between grammar and yoga, but one never knows. But over a period of time, I think that what Guruji has done, possibly a few generations later, people may say, was it the same Iyengar? For example, here he completely defined how asanas are to be practiced, the detailing, the technicalities. So he gave a form structure. He was possibly one of the first with his light on yoga to write in the systematic manner asana, the meaning of the name, the method, the effects. And mind you, there has been a thesis which has compared books on books before and after light on yoga. So that's an entire new dimension of the art of presenting yoga. Even if you look that he is the one who photographed, we are not talking of a digital age, to what angle should a pose be shown in a 2D book, top, bottom, side, because the angle will totally differentiate. And they see that there is no shadow. You're using lights. So, and to stay in that asana, that's a total dimension. Talking about yoga, the depth of the philosophy of yoga, then the therapeutic aspect, the innovations, the creation of language of communication. When you say open the chest, it's so common in our terminology. Now, how does somebody who's never done it understand it? So, he's really created a language. So you can say that if somebody say, oh, no, somebody does philosophy and therapy, innovation, scientist. So, there are so many dimensions of one individual. So I think that ability possibly has got people to revere him so much worldwide. He just touched people's hearts because there was no compulsion. There was no compulsion at all from any of us to go and continue learning with him. Why? Professionally, I think we were all highly qualified. We were not looking for any kind of, revenue or recognition. Nothing. But something kept you going at a time where you didn't need a support system of philosophy or, something. So sometimes you can say, you latch onto something when you're low, or we didn't need anything. We didn't need to teach yoga to earn a livelihood. Nothing. But it was his charisma, that sort of, I think, got people so attached to him.
So, for example, like in Iyengar Yoga, we use props, and I know how they help me to experience a particular asana in a better way, or in a way it should be experienced. Now, Guruji, I don't know how did he come up with different props, which are helping us better our lives in ways we can't even imagine how beneficial it is. Why did he not patent something like it? Because he
People
could
have
have.
asked him, first of all, see the biggest difference between Guruji and possibly the others. I'm saying possibly because I have no first-hand experience. Is that Guruji started learning the practical aspects of yoga first. He was sort of forced into it. He was unwell. His brother-in-law said, yes, tried. Then later he got into the philosophy of it. He wanted to corroborate that what he experienced matched what was written in the text. Normally what happens, you study a theory and then you try to interpret what the writer has said. Anything. Here it was practical and trying to see that what he practiced matched. And that is where I think the big difference occurred. And that is why he could win people. So because he could give an experience. So if this is Sthira Sukham Asanam, now you can translate it. If I were to translate Sthira, stable, Sukha, sense of joy, bliss, comfort, Asana. So being in any comfortable position is an asana. Now, or being comfortable in any position is an asana, which is correct. So that is why Guruji possibly said that Patanjali has not said that is a limitation. Stiram Sukham Tadasana or Stiram Sukham Asana. It can be any condition, any position. That's why these deep technicalities came in. That is why the props came in, because one needed to be stable. So if he could stay, he found he would help people personally, physically. But then he found that, how many people could he help? The number started increasing. So he innovated and got the props. So, okay, I don't have my knee to support your hip or back in Vipradandasana. Okay, use the chair. And when people did ask him, he said, did the yogis, the rishis patent anything? So, he was a yogi. So it's not that he wanted, patent or any such thing. Okay, people are benefiting. And especially since he had suffered so much in his childhood with ill health, he wanted that let people do yoga for health. People never talked of yoga for health in the earlier times.
Hmm.
It was not. It was a spiritual subject. So there have been people who have been questioned that why is he bringing down? It's not meant for ordinary men. He said, yes, but everybody is not a Raman Maharishi or Ramakrishna Paramhans who can go on the path of spirituality although their physical body is suffering. Ordinary people, however much they want to be spiritual, if your knee pains or your neck pains or X, Y, Z, your mind goes away from spirituality. So, okay, let them get relief. So that's how we started. And that's how Iyengar yoga became so much associated with therapy. Then, obviously, everybody didn't have his touch and sensitivity, so the props came in. So he never ever thought of patenting anything. So he's saying, let everybody use it. And in fact, forget patenting. People have humiliated him for using the props. They've called him a furniture yogi. What does he know about yoga? He just took it in his stride. He didn't bother because he knew it was helping people. So there's no question of patenting. There have been articles written about how this is not yoga, what he's doing. So, who defines what is right? Who knows what Patanjali said? And, so we've heard all this, and even I have heard it. Forget him, which is in, say, last 15 years. People questioning, but that didn't matter because, see, you felt something, you sharing that experience. There's no compulsion. And if it works for you, great. So there was never any kind of, and Guruji always gave, he's never really taken. And he would also tell us as teachers, that you should give more than, he never told us teach free. He said, give more than what you receive. So that was, something which always remained that, oh, you shouldn't. So people would always feel, okay, whatever we are giving, are we paying enough? So that kind. So, that was his, and he did it himself. Like all of us were trained by teachers. We have never paid anything extra for that teacher training. Never. We've attended classes, we have done, he's taught so much more in terms of intensity. What we've got nothing we've given. So, he lived by whatever he spoke, he said. So I think it's influenced us in a big way. Maybe it subtly seeped in.
That's pure generosity, right? Because even like
Yeah,
I know my fellow practitioners and students, we benefit so much. We don't even know how much there is no. It's so invaluable that I don't know how to even express gratitude for a simple block. I mean,
yes,
we're extremely grateful. I wish
yes,
there was some way to tell him thank you, but
yes. So many things. But at least I think people should appreciate, recognize. Maybe as a yogi, it may not matter to him, you know, but as students, as practitioners, we feel that the world should know that this has come from one brain utility, when
and thank God, he kept on to it despite the critics because today we, like generations, and I don't know how many people ahead are benefiting and will benefit. I mean,
yeah,
that whole
like I said, he never had mass to show something. So that's why whatever people said, it never affected him. Maybe it affected him, but it never changed his course of his work. Yeah. Okay.
So, like in our class, right? We every week we have a different a class only on standing asanas, inversions, backward extensions. So, pranayam or so why is it the way this is like?
See, as humans, we all have likes and dislikes, right?
Mhm.
The day we go beyond, we are we have reached a different state. So in our practices also, it's going to creep in, right? So I may be more, I like standing asanas, I don't like inversions, and all are required. So as teachers, there is a, it's not a thumb rule, it's not a rule in any way, but it's something that has been imbibed. So you create this. So a teacher gives the student everything and exposure to everything. So for example, if I don't, as a student, I don't like, and I've become a teacher now, and I don't like Shirshasana, you will see that it will not come in my teaching so much.
Oh.
So here I will at least do something so that, that it's not just a variety, but a complete exposure is there. Or I can say, especially in the beginning, first 10, 15 years of practice, later all asanas become one. But it is very important because otherwise I have students who are lazy or who are coming exhausted. So, okay, I can give them, the easiest thing to do is get them to do a Purvatanasan on chairs, a Vipridandasana on a chair, supported Adho Mukha Svanasana, supported supine poses, chair Sarvangasana. They're all going to go back very happy, extremely happy. It's going to rejuvenate you. But would that be fair to do that all the time? Don't they need to build up the inner capacity? Is it just to recover and rejuvenate? Isn't the practice of yoga much more than that? So, so that's why this kind of a subtle discipline has set in. It's not a rule, but you will see a certain level. Each teacher brings their own essence, but you will see a certain format which is there across the world. So, whichever part of the world you go to, if it's a qualified or a recognized Iyengar yoga teacher, you'll see the similarities at some base level.
And I've seen that in students also, like my like some of my students senior to me, or all of us, like we get so used to the way our classes are that sometimes if we go to another place and some yoga classes are going on, somehow we can't connect. How is it that we also just stay with the way because we find it so pure and our connect with our teachers or the way they teach us. I don't know what is it, but you just know that okay, or maybe the teacher's explanation is so in depth for one asana that if somebody just takes it, sometimes you find somebody else giving like just two words or just saying that do this asana, it feels superficial. Like in, I've experienced a teacher explaining on Tadasana, like sometimes for 15, 20 minutes. And I've gone to some other places and I've seen it's just so fast. And then, like the way our teacher just tells us about tailbone or just keep, the inward action, like inward inside out action of the arm, they take so much time. So, what is it about that we students also can't just
I don't
copy
know.
any of it?
I don't know, but I think, one thing is that when you're practicing in Gurdji's tradition, it's to go into the depth of the subject. So possibly those who stay are those who are mentally inclined or are finding something into this. Those who don't will never last long. So they would go in the first few months. So they will not be. So it's not that you don't have dropouts. Definitely there are dropouts. But then those who are not interested in this kind would possibly move away. And it's also the duty of the teacher to adapt the teachings to the level of the student. So we can't do this kind of teaching to a youngster, to a teenager. It has to be totally different. So one has to go to the level of the student or the age level, the interest level. So we can't teach like this to a sports person because a
Hmm.
sports person will have different situations at different times. So that is the entire range that is there. So I think it's also about the kind of people you are dealing with.
Hmm.
So it's not that if we are teaching a group of therapeutic patients, there is no speaking there because you can't give them depth. There's no need. They're suffering. Our job is to give them relief. That's it. There's no yoga philosophy there. Later they get it because otherwise I'm fooling them. Making them feel good for that 1.5 hour, taking their mind away, talking well, nice, giving them, yes, it's a distraction. But what happens afterwards? So that's not the time, nothing. There you go for the purpose you have gone. So that's the wide range that has to be there.
One more thing in terms of pranayam, right? Like we believe that our students like it's kept so sacred. Like you should your asana practice should be so strong that the teacher says that at least 2 years should be a base set to learn some amount of pranayam. And there are some schools of yoga who just start teaching them.
See, actually, it's not just pranayam that is sacred, entire practice is sacred. And when it
Sorry.
comes to, it's not that it's 2 years or something. See, basically, you need certain level of stability.
Hmm.
So even if you relate or associate prana with the breath,
Hmm.
which is it is in reality much more, you still are not in a position because the mind of a raw student, an average raw student, is wandering.
Hmm.
Stability is not there. So where is the question of observation? But it is not that our practices are devoid of the breath. When you say inhale, jump, inhale, spread, exhale. So you're already being unknown to you and you are already toning your breath, utilizing your breath in a particular manner. So the breath component comes in the practice right from day one. It's not, but it's not pranayama, but the breath component comes day one. Then you start going in because yes, you need certain level of stability before you can get into pranayama. But that's why, you'll always have at least some restorative breath observations starting right from the first month or of practice. Then one goes into the subtleties. So it's not like it's there, but we would like people to attain some level. Also, asana practices, if you make a mistake, that's not a problem. Maximum, you'll get a catch, you'll get a back pain, and you'll know immediately I got it while I was doing this or I got it after this. In pranayama, the effects come much later. The negative effects, supposing you're holding your breath very strongly, using force, you may land up with headaches and they may come over a period of time. You may not even relate it to your practice, which is dangerous. So, you need to have certain level of sensitivity before getting into pranayama practice. And that's the reason. Because, you're dealing, I think, the practice of yoga, you're dealing with the body, mind, emotions of the individual. And you need a certain level of study because if you go to a doctor, even if he's treating your physical or physiological body, you still want to go to somebody who has enough experience. Here we are dealing also with the psychological, which is so very subtle, not obvious. So this is also in terms of caution that we do this. So if it's a smaller group, things may be different. If it's a larger group, things are different. So the way we teach also varies with not only the quality but the number of students. So we have to, the communication means changes. So it's not that it's not, but we are extra cautious because first thing is do no harm. Even if you don't give benefit, do no harm. Then comes the other aspects.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Okay. Yeah.
Ma'am, can you give us one of the most like, memorable teaching moment or learning moment, like anything that always has stayed with you? I've read
No,
your book, Imagine If, and I think there are many, 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 but can you quote
no,
one?
there are many moments, and I think it's very difficult to pinpoint as such. But I think, of course, Guruji has been a great influence, so also is Neetaji. I mean, to such an extent. And what has stunned me or shocked me to an extent is that as if she had timed her passing, because 12th December evening, I meet her at home. And, the last 6 months of her life, before that, she had been unwell, a little bit here and there. But from June 2018, she did so many workshops, so many teachers training, you can't name it, and fully into it. I mean, students would get exhausted. And then we were planning the centenary program, and we discussed with her. And it was planned finally that 13th, one day she would speak, one day Prashantji would speak. And in the first the session she took, 1,500 people were totally under a command, getting each and every person seeing, her typical style fully. And 12th evening, she says, okay, so I've done my work. I said, no, Gitaji, it's a 13, 14 program is there. No, what is there to say? I've said whatever I have said to. And we were a little, you speak. I said, what will I speak? They're coming to listen to you. Okay. But so I said, no, unless you are not well, then we'll make some arrangements, something. No, think about it. Okay, Gitaji, we will, in case you don't come. Uh, and she said, okay, if I don't come till 3 o'clock, I think it was afternoon, and she comes, she gives up, memorable. Then the 14th,
Mm.
15th Saturday, she called people who had come to meet her, saying, oh, so and so wanted to meet, call them. They phoned those people and get. So I'm fully okay. And 16th morning, she's no more. And you believe me, for 6 months, she kept saying, I've told God to keep me till Guruji's centenary. To an extent, initially we felt bad. Later, we would get annoyed. What is she talking? And then we said, no, don't do it. Kind of her nephew, Harit and all. What are you saying, kind? So because she was fully well, fully charged. And she kept saying this all the time. And then she did something on her mother's 80th birthday or 90th it was, and said, why do you want to do it now? There's such a big event. You do it afterwards. She never listened to anybody. And it is just unbelievable. It literally appears as if she had a full control. And I've still not got over it. Because we left Pune and said we'll go next week to meet her, left the clothes behind, stuff. We're going to. Nobody ever imagined that, somebody. And she kept saying, she must have said it so many times that we would even take it seriously. But yeah, there she was. So I don't know. And I'm sure many other people feel like that. So I think I think yoginis, I think they go beyond gender also, who have actual control of life and death kind of thing. They know. So I mean, we don't know what it is, but I think these are totally a different. They are beyond humans. That's all I can say. And I think we've all been very fortunate to have an opportunity to have come into life at the same time, and just grace, I would say, or karma, that we got in touch with them. I mean, there was no reason for us to get interested in yoga, to meet Guruji. There was no connect as such. Not that we were searching for yoga. I mean, even if we look at it, we were very young. My father said somebody introduced him. He felt it was good, took us. We were too young to object, or we didn't find any reason, and it just continued. So there's no explanation of why we did, why we continue, uh, where you find, science, this. I think it's just, that's when you start believing in something far beyond human abilities.
So actually, when I hear you talk, I don't know, I don't even feel like asking you as yoga as a career because you talk at such a higher level that asking yoga as a career feels like very, I don't know whether that is the right question to ask.
To be honest, see, it does give people a livelihood in a way, but I think it's a subject far beyond, far beyond. So I would say it other way, that, instead of thinking of yoga as a career, think of yoga as a support for your career. Because whatever career path you take, whatever you do, yoga will make you better in it. And I'm not even talking of it as a professional. You could be a homemaker, which is a tough job,
Mm.
because it's a thankless 24/7 job. it makes you much better at that. It makes you handle. Whether you are a scientist, it gives you clarity of thought, and that is what science is all about. If you are an artist, it gives you creativity. If you're a musician, it gives you creativity. So if you are in finance, whatever it is, moment you have clarity in thought and emotional equanimity, you're bound to do better. And you're also bound to handle the ups and downs better. So I think that whatever one does in life, because somebody's going to do something, for whatever reason, whether it's an occupation or financial reasons or liking for it or talent or whatever it is, I think it it's a very strong support system, and that's the reason I feel everybody should practice. Not look at it as a means of livelihood, because moment your survival depends on yoga, there'll be very few people, very small amount. There will be people. I'm not saying they won't, but then you yoga will get away from you, because see, especially if you're very young. I'm not talking about the older generation, but young people. Because just now I may be in my 20s and I may say, okay, I want to devote my life to yoga. Later, after 5 years, you see your friends earning, having a different life. Then either you will resent, or you will say, oh, I made the sacrifices for yoga. And I think yoga needs nobody. So then, what you started with moves away. So I always feel, yes, you can teach, you can write, you can do X, Y, Z. Let it be parallel to something else. And when you do it parallel to something else, it's a win-win. So, yeah, at some point, yes, when you get older, maybe, but I would definitely not say start of thinking of it, because it's far beyond, you know. So I think it's something which it should be a part of your life, starting from a very early age, if you're fortunate enough, and stick to it, and it'll make you better in whatever you decided to, or what destiny decides for you to do in life. So I think of it like that.
So, ma'am, just like since it's about career, like when I in yoga, our fee is so low. And it's not even compared to what you all teach, right? I mean, you all teach so much that why do you charge so low? It's like why?
See, there are multiple reasons. First, we are a charitable trust, and we
Mm.
want everybody to practice, and we don't see a need to increase the fees. Secondly, we feel it's a family. We don't want one person. Okay, everybody financial situation in Mumbai, for example, is improving by the day. I mean, average. But there are people who cannot, who want their family to do. And if there are 5 people in the family, they'll say, okay, let one attend. Let everybody come, no? Let all the generations come. It keeps the family together. Otherwise you say generation gap. But if the grandchild and the grandfather are practicing, it keeps them together. There's such
Mm.
a commonality. So let everybody come. We don't need. And yes, there are students who are very generous, who give in many different ways. So it's not just saying that, if Guruji said giving does not impoverish, withholding does not enrich. So that's the reason. And yes, as and when things are required, people have given. So we don't see. And secondly, we also need to learn to give. So as teachers, see, we are not earning. I mean, even if I'm a full-time yoga teacher, or whoever is a full-time yoga teacher, you're not asking them only to teach at Yoga Shred. So you also learn the art of giving, and you may teach elsewhere where you charge what you charge and learn. So it's that uh, bhava also has to come, and you can't teach all this. It's only comes which is imbibed. So that's, I think, and there is no need, for us. So we are not a corporate organization whose objective is to earn more money. So our object of the trust is to spread Guruji's teachings, and not just show numbers to the world, but see that it continues through generations. So we do have people third and fourth generation. I mean, we see people in class, right? Second, 2 generations is so common. 3 generations is also not uncommon now. Maybe they are not in the same class, they're in different classes. So you can see how we are able to do that. So I think because we have people of various financial backgrounds. So coming in. So let it be open. If somebody wants to give more, they can always, it's a trust, they can donate. So nobody's stopping that. But we don't want anybody to be stopped because it can be. So I think we have not actually raised the fees of the lower parent center since we started.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how, why. I mean, I
The
always,
numbers are there. And I think we have the grace and blessings. So we are managing. The day we feel the need, yes. I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of the trustees, and I'm sure that view is there. Okay, I think, yeah, we have nearly 1 hour. If you have any more questions, specific, go ahead.
okay. Just one or two questions, ma'am. Um, how come are our teachers so generous about the contributions they, do for Iyengar yoga or through Iyengar yoga? Like they do therapy classes, they do classes for pa- patients with this diseases like Parkinson's. It's so tough, no? Like you all take so much your own bodily effort. What makes you do that?
No, we've seen all this. So, like I've said, we've seen Guruji, we've seen Geeta ji. So somehow, you feel that if you have seen a difference, why not help? That's all. So yeah, it is exhausting, no doubt. And we have some teachers or volunteers who willingly come. They leave their jobs, their profession, their businesses, and come and help us out.
Oh,
Because there's a joy that you get when you see a person who is walking in barely and walks back. That you have given life to somebody. So there are people who may think that it's not worth their time. It doesn't generate revenue. They don't do it. But I'm happy that there are people who come and volunteer. So we have been able to transmit, even if it's a small percentage of people, that aspect of Guruji's teachings. So Guruji's teachings are not the instructions. Guruji's teachings are not the props or how to use the props or how to use the 10 different, 100 different ways. Guruji's teaching is to bring life to yourself and give life to others. So I think that when we, even if a small amount of people we are able to, it gives joy to see that. So
it's pure seva, right? I mean,
I don't know. Honestly, we've never really thought about it. So, for example, when somebody, if say this Parkinson has become quite a model, we've been doing it for 18, 19 years. So somebody approached the trust that, we would like to have classes and, we've heard. So it was a support group. And somehow, being a researcher by profession, the idea was, oh, you're coming with a big group, let us see it works or not, just because of your scientific training or that kind of training. So we did that study and we found it works. After a while, yes, it could have ended there, but then you felt guilty that if you are showing it works and then not giving it, it's like putting a food in front of a hungry man and then taking it away. So that's how it started more, and then people volunteered. Many people have continued right from the first class that we did, one or two of the teachers. Some have left on the way, because it's exhausting, or they're also getting older. Some come back. So the system works. So yeah, so I think it's just the, when you see something is helping, as long as you are capable or it's possible for you, why not? And we hope that many more will take up to it because it has been there.
yes. And
Okay.
last question, ma'am. How
Okay.
are you guys so humble, all of you all?
I don't know. I don't know whether we are humble. I don't know.
No, you all are, right? All the teachers are so humble. They never
Well,
feel
I
like being a
think
teacher.
that's possibly because a lot of people do feel that Iyengar yoga teachers are very arrogant. I mean, that's also the feedback that we get.
But I
So,
think when you all are teaching, it's not you all are teaching. You all always consider yourself as a medium. You all are, just. It doesn't feel. It's so difficult just to see that the teacher is so humble. I have seen teachers saying thank you to students because they tell us that
no,
you all
I
are
think
teaching us.
yeah, that is true. Because, see, we are also, teaching is also not a one sided process. There's a lot of learning happening in teaching. And we need to realize that. But that one also has, so all these things are very fine lines. So there's a line of humility, but if I become so humble, that I'm unable to command over the students. So there is the real humility, there is um, creating a perception of humility. But I think the fact does remain that what is very important with Guruji's teachings and for his teachers is you continue practice. So all of us, if not, at least we continue learning or attending classes. So you remain students externally, and of course internally your personal practices, etc., would be there. And I think that the more you go deeper into the subject, you realize how little you know. You know the depth, and you know it's huge. So one becomes humble. It's not that you. So when you start something, you can be arrogant, but when you stay in it for long, you know how much you know. So I guess that's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
everything.
Pooja. See
Thanks.
you.